This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette. And we're reading Fleming Storage Unit 132, Final Film by Growlith the Cub. So again, we are continuing to venture into the Fleming Storage Units, see what kind of horror stories we can uncover from here. And I'm excited to see what the final unit has in store for us. The door slides up with ease. No loud clatter or thud when it stops. Towels had been carefully wedged in the track to stop the sound. I stepped in and, with my free hand, waved away the officer who had escorted me to the storage unit, last on the left, at the back corner of the Fleming Storage Units. I had tried to get in the unit 4 days prior, on the 8th, but the gate was locked and a sign had been posted. Due to an emergency situation, the Fleming Storage Unit Center is being indefinitely shut down. This was one of the days that people were allowed to pick up all their junk. I was back today, with a projector under my arm. "You're supposed to be taking things out," I said the bored-looking patrolman when I walked up to the main entrance. It says gain entrance, but obviously it's supposed to be main entrance. So this seems to be written in present tense as opposed to past tense, which is in keeping with the rules of the project, but this is establishing the imagery very well. Pressing on. The morning was chilly, no more than 40 degrees. There was the scent of a leaf fire in the air. A leaf fire in the air. I smiled. Elizabeth always loved fall for that frequent smell, burning leaves. I spun the wedding band on my finger and thought back to the first fall in the new house. Elizabeth looked so beautiful in her knit hat and matching purple gloves. Her long blonde hair cascading down the side of her face seemed to glow in the light of the setting sun. I remember the laughter we shared. I remember falling into the pile of leaves as we made the fire for the evening bonfire. She laughed and laughed at how clumsy I was. We were so happy back then. I pulled the jacket tighter before lowering the door. I pulled the flashlight from my jacket pocket, and with the click of a button, the room in front of me was perpetually illuminated, like the last street light on a sidewalk about to end. The unit was mostly empty. All that was left was the dark wood writing desk, matching wooden chair, and an extension cord that stretched under the door to the light socket just outside. I was honestly surprised that the cops had let it be. I guess a bit of electric theft isn't such a big deal to them when they are coping with a dead guy in one of the units. So this phrase leaf fire is being presented as though that's just a common phrase, but I guess just, leaves on fire, and they go on to explain that with the bonfire. That's typically not what I've ever used to make a bonfire, but then there's the explanation, the description of Elizabeth, who maybe isn't in our narrator's life anymore. It's not clear yet, but Elizabeth is described exceedingly well. I can really picture her. I have an idea of what she looks like, how her knit hat matches with her hair, and, I'm getting a good sense of that. I'm also getting a good sense of the scene of the situation inside the storage unit. But there is this clunky wording here and there about just grammatical things, issues here and there, needing to have leaf fire explained a little bit better, but pressing on. Projector in hand, I moved towards and sat at the desk and looked around the storage unit. It was mostly bare. A 10 by 25-foot slab of concrete covered a tin box. Nothing to look at now, but as I scanned the room, in my mind it filled with deep reds and gold, ornate bookshelves, and a decorative rug and lamp. The bookshelves held only a few books. In their place were jewelry boxes, teddy bears, a snow globe, pictures of elegant mismatched frames, carefully preserved newspaper clippings, and dozens of other seemingly random knickknacks. This place was once a study of sorts, a refuge, someone's private sanctuary. I was lost in the reverie of this place for a long period, remembering every little detail until I looked to the corner of the room and saw the Gibson Les Paul. That vision lasted for only an instant, then I was once again sitting in the dark at a desk in an empty storage unit. So call me crazy, but I think there was a few weird tense things at the beginning where I wasn't sure if we were in present or past tense, but now it looks like we are in past tense. This moment right here, we're being taken to another, imaginary place, a place in the past, I'm assuming, with all of the items in there, taking this person on a memory journey. And then the Gibson Les Paul, for some reason, pulls them out of that, and they are once again reminded that they are just inside this empty storage unit. All right. What's significant about the Les Paul? We'll see what's significant about that guitar. I sat there for a few moments and closed my eyes. I was standing outside in the rain. It was a real downpour that had soaked through my rain parka and new Chuck Taylors. I was peering through the window of a large house. It was a really nice place, picturesque, light blue, 2 stories, 50s style, right down to the cliché white picket fence. Even in the dark and the rain, you could tell the owner took a lot of pride in its appearance. Determined, a quick jog around the house to the door. I took a deep breath, hesitating only a moment before ringing the bell. That was the longest moment I remember, waiting an eternity for someone to answer. A man opened the door, late 40s or early 50s, pretty average height, about 5'10" or so, and probably 210 pounds. His black hair had started to gray around the temples. He looked at me with a surprised expression on his face. "Oh, thank God! I'm so glad someone is home." I sighed at the man. My car broke down just up the road. Big old metal spike in my tire," I gestured, separating my hands 2 or 3 feet apart. "Would you mind if I used your phone? Mine's kinda dead," I said while pulling my phone out of my pocket and shaking it in the man's direction. The man looked at me owlishly and said nothing. After a moment passed of swapping stares, he shook his head and exclaimed, "Oh, of course you can, young man. Please come in." He opened the door fully and stepped inside, extending an arm to invite me in. So there we have a lot of stuff to unpack. We get a certain situation going on. This person keeps falling down these memory holes, right? They keep getting caught up thinking about things that have happened in the past. We have, the specifics of the kind of shoes they're wearing, Chuck Taylors, the rain parka, the very prototypical 50s style American house. I can set myself there. I can see it in the rain. I'm seeing all of this situation. I'm seeing the car broke down up the road. I'm getting all of this. He ushered me into the room on the side of the hallway leading into the house. This room was a study, I would guess. The inside of the house was just as well kept as the exterior. The walls were lined with gilded bookshelves filled with books, objects d'art, and knickknacks. The floor was covered by a beautiful and lavish rug made of red and gold fibers. The windows were blocked by thick, deep red curtains ending in silky golden fringe. The chairs in the room were made of dark wood, upholstered with red fabric and gold embroidery. The desk was the same dark wood, sat in the middle of the rug. Every piece of furniture vied for the others for luxury, and each piece looked quite expensive. Okay, so there is a theme going on here of red and gold and dark wooden colors, and it's a very regal home, what's the term? Welcoming kind of feel to it. And I think that they're really trying to push that. That's like a very specific thing to stick out in your mind, and it stuck with this narrator for some reason, Wow, this is a really nice place you have here, I said to him, looking around the room. Oh, it's nothing too special. I modeled it after the study in my dad's room when I was a kid. The name's Henry Walters. I turned my attention to the ornate gold falcon statue on the desk when he said that. I turned to him and replied, Wendell Goldberg. Pleasure to meet you. Henry pointed to the phone on the desk. Phone's right there. Help yourself. I do hope you know how to use a rotary phone. Okay, so we have an old-timey phone here in the time of cell phones, and we're getting this exchange. We know that our narrator is named Wendell, and that this man with graying hair on his temples is named Henry Walters. Thank you, Henry, I said, picking up the phone and starting to dial. Henry left the room and walked into the hallway. I guess he wanted to give me privacy for the phone call. After I hung up, he walked back into the room so quickly that it was clear he had been listening to my end of the call. I told Henry it would be a few minutes before help would arrive, and he looked around the room. I pointed at a saber resting on one of the shelves and asked Henry about it. He boasted for a moment about his treasure and then went around the room. His trophy room, he called it, pointing out the things and pulling them out to show me. The saber was from the Civil War, a gaudy egg that used to belong to some royalty. Then he went to show me the content of the extremely ornate box sitting on the highest shelf of the far wall. That was when I struck him on the back of the head with the golden falcon statue on the desk. Okay, so it turns out that our narrator is some sort of psychopath, possibly a murderer, and they knocked out this person on the back of the head. Something was very a Clockwork Orange about this to begin with, but I thought my suspicions about that were kind of off base. I thought it was kind of a leap, but I guess that is the case. Our narrator is possibly the bad guy in this situation, certainly the aggressor, perhaps out to rob this gentleman of his stuff. When Henry woke up, I had already moved him. We were now in the tin box on the slab of concrete, another study of sorts belonging to Harry. You're awake! I could see the confusion and fear growing in his eyes as he looked around the room. I thought this would be a more appropriate place to have the rest of this little chat. I thought you may be more comfortable here surrounded by all of your trophies. I spat bitterly. I leaned over and clicked the button to start the projector in the now empty unit. The projector flickered to life. Okay, so we have knocked out Henry Walters and taken him to the Fleming Storage Units, and we're going to show him something. This is becoming a very Clockwork Orange. The man tied to the chair on the screen struggled against his restraints violently, his fear turning to anger. I looked at myself, looking in the camera. No sound came from the projector, so I repeated what I said while my lips moved silently on the screen. It really is a nice room. I do hate to have imposed upon your little sanctuary here, but it really is the only place that felt right. I closed my mouth and said nothing more as the rest of the film rolled. The film noir doppelganger crossed the other side of the screen and looked at Henry as he flicked on the same projector. The anger in Henry's eyes turned to pure terror as the film started to play. He tried to look away. He tried to act like he had some shame. He tried to act like he was sorry for what he had done. My lips started to move on the screen again, and with no sound, barely able to make out the lip movements on account of the quality of the old equipment, I knew every word. I could hear it echoing in my head, So at first I was trying to figure out what's going on here, whether this is film in real time or what's going on necessarily. We know that our narrator, Wendell, is both in the film and in the room, and apparently so is Henry? I'm kind of confused at the moment. No! You don't get to look away. You don't get to act like you didn't do these things. That is you on the screen. That is you there. That is you holding a knife. That is you. That is you pressing the knife against her throat. I heard the words in my head while watching myself pull the knife into his view. That is you. That is you causing that terrified look in my wife's eyes as you force yourself on her. And that is you plunging that knife into her throat. And now she's gone. You left her to bleed out and left the camera running while she died. I left the film rolling until all signs of life had been... Okay, this is no longer a quote. I left the film rolling until all signs of life had been drained from Elizabeth's body. I wanted to live through these moments I had missed, all the moments he thought were beneath his pleasure for her, his pleasure before. I wanted the terror in his heart to be the same as the terror Elizabeth felt as her life spilled down her throat and pulled on the floor. Okay, so this is apparently a videotape, I don't know where it came from, of Henry, this older rich man, killing and raping Elizabeth, who I'm going to presume is our narrator, Wendell's wife. I do not know, even if you were this revenge-crazed person, I don't know that you would want to watch this video again, and I don't know that you would describe Elizabeth in this way. Her blood pooling and everything, going down her throat and pulling on the floor. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that that's a believable motivation. Maybe if it was a more Dexter kind of scenario where this person is a psychopath, independent of, all of this and getting revenge for, not getting revenge, but just, kind of being a murderer of murderers or something, then maybe. But I'm not a fan of this motivation, quite honestly. The memory of my wife sends tears down my cheek. The film keeps playing, moving towards the climax as Henry starts to cry. I could almost hear the sobs echo off the metal while watching it, to please through the rag I used to gag him for our little movie presentation. I smacked Henry across the back of the head again as I walked up and turned off the projector. Okay, again, just reiterating this, I don't feel like you would have come to terms with the fact that your wife died. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. And this is in quotes. You will looky here, that very camera that you use to film it, isn't it? Watching myself point directly from the screen. He didn't respond in time, and I watched myself slap him in the head hard. He nodded his head once, sharply affirming that yes, that is the camera that he used to film this heinous act. And why don't you think that I have it set up? He started fighting against his restraints again with renewed force, and the next moment I watched myself go over to the guitar in the corner and pick it up. Slowly and deliberately, I walked around behind Henry for a moment and then stepped in front of him, holding the guitar. I gave this to her, It was her favorite thing in the world. She had it for over 10 years. You look at this, and all you see is a trophy. I look at this, and I see her life, everything we have been through together, everything that could have been. I see her love and her passion. I step behind Henry and set the guitar back on its stand and hunch down. I see myself put my head in my hands and start to cry. More tears start to fall down my face as I watch my ghostly apparition, but the pain is still real. After a moment, I stand back up and walk back into focus. I take the knife and plunge it into Harry's chest. What, you're not going to rape him too? Like he raped your wife? Yeah, this isn't realistic. This isn't the kind of motive a person would have. A person would want to just kill or torture this person. They wouldn't want to relive the moments of their loved one dying. And this is dragging that out. It's very theatrical, and I don't know that you can have something quite this theatrical and maintain realism. I looked down at the bare floor of my chair, from my chair. I half expected to see puddles of blood on the concrete. No, I know better than to think it would be there. Henry's fancy red and gold rug soaked up most of his blood. The ammonia did the rest. I cleared all the trophies out of the room after that. I thought about letting it all be found by the cops, letting him be found out for the sick fucker that he was. I thought about letting this place be found so that the families of all those other missing women would have some closure. In the end, though, I didn't want to have any notoriety. So instead, I decided to destroy and burn everything, every piece of evidence that he had been the one abducting all those people, all those dozens of films he had made, every trophy. His whole little sanctuary would be destroyed without a trace, without anyone knowing his name. I had taken that power from him, and I would wield it as cruelly as he had his knife. So you're becoming a serial killer after he is? I'm kind of confused by that. I like the fact that you're using that Henry is going to die on his own rug and everything, but I'm also kind of confused as the tense here, whether we're pushing back into present tense with this next paragraph or what, but I think this is a little too grandiose. I don't think that this is what people have in mind when they think Ashcan horror. Martin Wells was the name Henry used on the paperwork for the unit. The address he put was a vacant lot in Idaho. These cops really didn't do much of anything when looking into these units. A flash of fake Idaho license and paperwork got me back into the unit and let me take part in the final movie showing of Unit 32's history. I flipped the projector off and flashlight back on. I picked the projector and walked to the door. I raised it again without making a clatter and no thud. I stepped out and turned to the broken camera on the corner of the fence and gave it a wink. I grabbed the door, and as I pulled it down, a single thought crossed my mind. I was so looking forward to use this unit for the showing of my next movie. Okay, so apparently they became a serial killer after after he killed this other serial killer. Honestly, not a fan of where this went, the direction it took. I think it's a little too over the top, a little too revenge fantasy. And I think you can have a revenge fantasy, but it has to be a more grounded one, than, involving all of these serial killers and all of these murders. We've read other units where people have found information about people dying or committing suicide and very serious subjects, but they weren't idealized. They were very personable. And here it feels like we have a Jeff the Killer type character to a certain degree. I hope that this constructive criticism finds you well, Growlith the Cub. And I think we're going to have to end it there.
Now, if you enjoyed that, consider helping out the community and supporting my channel. You can support the community by conversing in the comments below and going to toospooky.com. That's TOO spooky.com for more original horror stories. While you're at it, try your hand at short horror yourself. You can support me by liking this video and following me on Twitter and Tumblr, links down in the description. Thank you so much for your time, and now on to our sponsor at this non-moment in time, which is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola.